I'm not going to bore you with too much about me. I'd like to really dig into the content today, but just to tell you a little bit, I don't really have 20 to 25 years of experience with just video, but I do have 20 to 25 years of experience with business marketing, agency work, and video, of course, is a big part of that. As you know, the webinars really kind of hit their stride 5, 6 years ago, and the same really happened with live video when Google Hangouts came out. And that's when I came onto the scene. I did a lot of work with Genesis Digital, who produced a product called Webinar Jam and EverWebinar. And that's how I really kind of got started in webinars and live video. So that's my background and where I came from. And since then, I've done a tremendous amount of work with live video, working with clients, getting them up to speed with it. I'm excited, and I'm not surprised that many of you haven't worked in live video before or with video much. Hopefully today will change that for you, because there's nothing more exciting than watching people getting started with live video and video for the first time. And when you do get started with that, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook and let me know how that's going, because I'd love to hear the story. And I really like to see what happens. It's kind of like when I teach people video for the first time, it's really like watching your children walk and talk for the first time. It's really quite amazing. But let's get into what's going on today, right? We've got a lot of stuff happening around us. And I love the title that Ross picked out when we first talked about this. He asked me, he said, you know, when I look at your expertise, it really looks like you're the guy that knows everything about webinars. And I really kind of hate the term guru, but I do know a lot about webinars. I know especially a lot about live video. And I'm excited to talk to you about that today. So what's happening with webinars, events, and live streaming? And how has COVID-19 changed everything really for the foreseeable future? We're looking today, right? And we're seeing so many things happening. And I'm going to get into that in a moment and just kind of really dig down with you. So the next thing I want to cover with you is the key elements of the $1 Million Webinar Formula for lead generation. I think that's a great strategy. Very few people really understand, and I'm excited to share that with you. Key strategies for using live video, why it's so effective right now. In fact, I think live video is one of these things that most people are overlooking. You know, when you want to double down on your marketing efforts, this is a great place to start, because in a lot of cases, it doesn't really cost you anything or much to do that. Where are things going, and a review of the opportunities to capitalize on these strategies today. That's what I'm going to end off on, and get your comments and see if we can answer some questions at the end with that. So let's talk about people working from home. You know, I love that was the first question that Ross asked today. You've worked from home for so long. What's a tip that you can share? There's so many people right now working from home, right? It's unprecedented. We haven't seen anything like this ever in our lifetimes, many of us. And it's it's shocking, and it's sobering at the same time. You know, we're watching live events get canceled, watching concerts get canceled, people who do speaker promotions. All these events are being canceled, and they're going virtual. So that's another issue for video. You know, we're trying to take up some of the slack now, producing virtual events, working with clients to do that. And that's a whole avenue of itself. There's special applications for doing virtual events. I use something called Hopin to do virtual events with my clients. We're also doing a lot of virtual events using just live because it's free, it's simple, and it's a great time to use these kinds of things to do promotion, to build tribe, and to build interest in the products and services that our companies are offering, right? So Zoom today, wow. I mean, can you believe the stuff that's going on with Zoom? We're watching companies get bombed by Conan O'Brien, right? I love these things. You know, we see Conan popping in on different companies, and it's unprecedented yet again. You know, we're seeing Zoom being used for school, for company meetings. You guys might actually be doing that yourselves, sitting in on corporate meetings and events. And we're seeing church services move to online. Again, it's wild to see, right? It's almost, gosh, I can't think of the word that I want for it, but it's just very shocking to watch all this happening around us. I'm sure you're as shocked to see it as I am. Our patterns of interaction and networking have changed. You know, we're used to talking around the office, interacting with our coworkers, networking events. You know, I typically go to quite a few networking events. I can't do those anymore. I'm holding my own networking events through Zoom and Hopin, virtual interface. So we're doing that really frequently now. And we're using live video to communicate, at least to start, in short snippets, to just see what gains traction with our audience and move forward with producing more live video on a regular basis. Because like I said, I think this is really the area that's kind of wide open right now. And we're seeing more and more people doing live video than we ever have before. Now, I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and my friend does copy for webinars for large corporations. I was telling him that I was doing this talk today for you guys. And I said to him, what's one thing that I could share that you've seen with your corporate relationships? And I know he meant this comment actually towards me, but it was so brilliant I had to share it with you, because I think it really emphasizes what we're seeing today and what you're going to probably remember from this presentation. So I want you to take careful notes. My slides are available to you if you want them. But again, it's kind of a sobering comment. And he said, think about what the audience wants and work backward to your message. Be concise. Remember that they're only going to remember 10% of your presentation. So for the 30 to 40 minutes that I'm talking today, you're going to remember 3 to 4 minutes of what I've said. How do you feel about that? This was really sobering to me to think about. I don't know how you feel about it, but I'd love to hear your thoughts in the chat. Tell me what you think of that. 3 to 4 minutes of a 30 to 40 minute presentation. Do you think you remember more than that? Do you think that's about right? Or do you think that's way too little? I'm just curious to see what your thoughts are. And you might as well decide for them which 10% and emphasize the heck out of it. This was his comments last night. And of course, we're all extremely distracted right now. There's so many things going on around us, right? We've got our family home where we're trying to work. We've got our spouses, our significant others, friends, roommates, whatever it might be, wandering around the house while we're on Zoom meetings and chatting with people. And we're all multitasking, like probably multitasking to the max, pretty much to our maximum extent right now. And I heard this yesterday, again, a really shocking statistic. Scientists have now determined we have the attention span of a goldfish. It used to be a little longer than goldfish, about twice as long, but now we're like right down to a goldfish. And again, shocking, very shocking to me that we're at that point. And I just wanted to say to Ross too, if there's any comments from the audience, Ross, that fit into this discussion, I'd love to hear back what the feedback is. It's hard for me to watch with the slides.
Sure. We have one comment here. I sometimes feel that video is the wrong format for communications because people have such short attention spans, but that it is necessary to show dimension.
That's a great comment. I would say kind of the opposite of that. I think anytime you can get your face out in front on video, even in your webinars, even if it's just a short time to say hello, this is who I am, and get people to know you, see you, like and trust you, it's something you want to try to do. And that's a great thing about live, and it's the great thing about the abilities we have with the webinar platforms to be able to do that now. At one point, all we could do was show our slides and speak to them so people got to know our voice. But really getting to know your face really helps you attract your ideal perfect clients, customers, and leads, depending on what situation you're looking for in your business. So I think it's extremely important to, like I said, try to get your face out in front of things as much as you possibly can. So the $1 million web formula. This is something I wanted to kind of cover through, at least briefly, to introduce you to it. It may be something that you've seen before, maybe something you're familiar with, maybe something you've never seen. And again, if you have questions along the way that you'd like to highlight, feel free to pop in on the chat or Q&A, whichever makes sense for you, and ask away. I tried to put this as concise a formula as I could. But the other thing when I was talking the other night to my friend who, like I said, writes copy for webinars for corporations, he said to me that the one thing that's really missing from corporate webinar structure right now is that they really aren't doing enough auto webinars. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what auto webinars are, but auto webinars to me are really the key to lead generation. So when Ross and I first talked, I wasn't thinking so much of live webinars for lead gen as I was thinking auto webinars. And the auto webinars the reason they're so popular is they don't take up your time. They'll take up your time once and then not again, right? Because they're going to run on autopilot. And in fact, one of the outlines, the next outline I'm going to include is our robot webinar formula, where I kind of go through the outline of what that looks like. And so you're going to really understand that. So the $1 million webinar formula looks a lot like this. We start our pre-promotion to a sign-up page. So this is, so for those of you doing webinars, this probably is nothing you're not familiar with. You're having people come to your sign-up page to sign up for your webinar that's going to be going on a certain day. The one thing that's different is we run a series of emails with that. And the idea of the emails, it's pretty much an email one every day for these next couple of things. We want to ruffle some feathers about the problem or the challenge that our clients or customers or whoever our audience is may be having at this point, right? We want to create some possibilities for them in a follow-up email. We want to tell them, you know, this is a problem, but there's a solution for it. And we want to go through next that problem and the solution so they're very familiar with it. And then we want to recap the points that we're covering in the webinar and give them a final webinar reminder before the actual date of the webinar. So when the actual date of the webinar comes, this is our actual pitch webinar. We're talking about whatever the subject matter is for the webinar we're providing that day. You want to provide a replay because again, especially with times like this, you know, I'd like to say I'd go sit through an hour and a half of a webinar, but many people are struggling with that. They don't want to go and sit down and sit for an hour and a half, 90 minutes, 2 hours. I sometimes my webinars that are like 4 hours long, if you can imagine. And think about what's going on right now, right? We're all in Zoom meetings in our company. We're meeting with other people around the company. Zoom meetings for so many different things. And how do you feel about that? Is that something that you'd want to sit through for that period of time? Probably not. So that's where auto webinars play an important part. Go ahead, Ross.
We got one question from the audience. Thoughts on
Okay.
shorter webinars, maybe 30 or 45 minutes or so?
What was that?
Uh,
Length?
Yeah, thoughts on doing like a shorter webinar, 30, 45 minutes.
I think shorter webinars are good in a lot of cases. It really depends, and the real answer is how long does it take you to go through that customer journey in order to get them from the problem to the solution and present what you need to present. Sometimes you can't do that in 30 to 45 minutes. Sometimes it takes longer. But I love the idea of keeping them shorter or also building up to that point where maybe you don't have to go into as much detail on the webinar. Or again, the auto webinar fits in perfectly, or the replay, because then they can schedule and watch that at whatever time they have. So just think through that carefully with whatever your product, service, or content is going to be. So the replay, like I said, is important, and we would take the replay after the fact in some of these webinars, and that would be our auto webinar. We've had a successful replay or a successful webinar. Now we got the replay for it, and it's very easy to go back and promote a replay as an auto webinar using a tool like Stealth Webinar or Ever Webinar, something like that. It works out perfectly. Some ways to follow up on the webinar afterwards. You know, emailing a case study, maybe something low level to start with. Follow up with a live, either a live webinar again, or follow up with an actual Facebook Live, YouTube Live, something like that to get them talking about it or give them some more information. Maybe even some additional solutions, dig into a little more detail. Link to a high-level case study would be a next one. And I think everybody loves case studies, right? We all love to see how people overcame a problem and went through a particular situation and got to the end of it. And I use case studies all the time with my clients. They eat them up because they're looking at a person or a company or somebody just like them, right? Who's gone through the same issues and found the light at the end of the tunnel, resolved it, took some action, and really got some traction. So anytime you can give anybody a high-level case study that really digs into some detail, that's going to help. Next, we're going to summarize the end of the promotion, let them know, again, this is what our offer is. Work through the details of it, and then maybe some kind of closing call or closing email to get people who were there off the fence with either a deadline or something of that nature that moves them forward with the promotion. And that's really the $1 million webinar formula. And it can be applied to live, and it can be applied to auto webinars for lead generation. So let me walk through with you, and I just tried to take something that we have that that's available, and it's about auto webinars actually, and it's the perpetual selling machine. And this is our sample webinar outline that we filled out for our own auto webinar. So our webinar tagline was, we wanted to get more consulting and agency clients in the next 30 days without having to meet with potential clients one-on-one. Who doesn't want that? Am I right? We really want to not have to meet with people individually, and we'd like to have people coming to us. So point one, we want to do the right thing. The line in the sand, the line in the sand with us is to truly be great at selling our expertise. We've got to put in the hours, and we have, right, 10,000 plus hours to truly be a master at what you do. So the overview, how we completely take ourselves out of hours for dollars mode by automating our webinars. And I think that's something that everybody would want to do. Let's look at point two here, the big picture math, right? We want to stop trading time for money. We've only got two things in life, right? Time and money. And some of us don't have a lot of time, and some of us don't have a lot of money. So we want to try to make that equation work. So pointing out the problems with selling one-to-one, this would be something that we would want to address in our webinar. How much more efficient you can be in a day by selling with webinars. How would it be to have, instead of 10 maximum appointments, maybe hundreds of appointments per day and tons of people to talk to? Lead generation is huge. That's one of the reasons that Ross came seeking me, right, for you guys, was because lead generation was a big interest of yours. And so pillar three, we want to leverage webinars to sell one-to-many and walk through 4 powerful parts of $1 million webinar. So just like I took you through the $1 million webinar, there would be some aspect of this here where we walk through the $1 million webinar and show how we can do that automatically and get the same results. And of course, the icing on the cake, we want to turn our webinar into an hourly sales meeting. So it doesn't take human intervention. It's very robotic, or AI in nature, in a sense. And of course, point 5 is the lock. This is our transition to the webinar pitch or the offer. How to get your webinar done in the next week. We talk about where most people mess up and drop the ball. They don't have a good system in a lot of cases. They need a mentor that's done many of them. And they don't know how to properly automate them. Webinars are simple, but they're not easy. So the idea of getting on video and getting a point across, using it as a selling tool, is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. But the nuances to what I just walked you through, as you saw earlier, in creating your own perfect webinar, are a little bit of a challenge. You've got to write all those emails, get that series worked out, really figure out all the structure points. So there's a lot to doing a webinar, which in a lot of cases is the reason that I think live or using live video is a great way to get started with webinars. It gets you thinking the right way about structure. It gets you engaged with your clients. It gets them. It gets you thinking about their issues. Go ahead, Ross.
So just as we're about to transition into the live component,
yeah,
I want to give you some of the feedback to the question that you kind of started out with.
Sure.
What platforms are people on, or what platforms do people think that are on, and therefore they should be on? So kind of got a lot of LinkedIn across the board, and then there's a strong B2B component, and then there's like a little sprinkling in of Twitter, Instagram. I see TikTok mentioned, but it looks like LinkedIn is the
TikTok
line. So
that's a bit of a surprise.
It might have humor mixed in there, but
yeah.
Your thoughts on LinkedIn being the through line? Yeah. Are there platforms that people are missing and therefore missing the value of? And your feedback on those things?
Yeah, I don't necessarily know there's platforms that you're missing. I don't think I heard you mention YouTube. Did you mention YouTube, Ross?
Oh, no YouTube mentioned.
No YouTube mentioned. I thought I didn't hear you say YouTube.
Yep.
So YouTube to me, where it's a second search engine, to me, being involved in YouTube some way or other is something that I think you really ought to think about and seriously consider if it makes sense for you and for your business. Um, Mostly because it gives you a lot of search options. If we want to go learn how to do something today, where's the first place we go? We go look for a video on YouTube. If we want to know about just about anything, it seems like we're going to search for a video on YouTube. It's harder to search for a video on Facebook. Those we just run across by accident most of the time. But yeah, that's what I think you would be missing if you're not using YouTube. So think about whether that makes sense. Ross and I talked quite a bit about LinkedIn the other day. I know one of the things that, for me, cold outreach on LinkedIn. And we both talked a little bit about that because he found me over there. And I love the idea of getting more videos uploaded to LinkedIn, even if they're short snippets about your company, your business, what you do, how you serve others. Those things go a long ways. And eventually LinkedIn is going to open up live video for everyone. They haven't right now. In fact, I know people like Viveka von Rosen. If any of you follow social media, she does a lot of stuff for LinkedIn training. She couldn't even get LinkedIn Live, if that says anything. I haven't been able to get on LinkedIn Live. I had one friend who lucked out and managed to get into LinkedIn Live. So the way that I think is the key to get into LinkedIn Live, and eventually it'll open up, but the way to do that is by publishing more videos, being involved in more live streams, making sure that if you put in an application for LinkedIn Live, that LinkedIn can see some of your previous works, especially if you can upload them to LinkedIn, build them into your profile, add them to your summaries on LinkedIn. I think you'll get a lot of traction. Because again, I don't think there's any way for people to get to know, like, and trust you better than through video. And this is really a key way to do it. I think especially key with LinkedIn, where LinkedIn is really business to business. How much of our audience, Ross, is business to business and business to consumer? That's
Yeah.
another one that I'm really curious about. So if you're B2B, put in B2B in the chat. If you're B2C, put in B2C in the chat.
Yeah. And we're familiar with a number of names that are tuned in
Sure.
right now. I think
Okay.
B2B is going to be the
Yeah, and that's okay.
yeah.
But obviously the way that you interact is going to be a little bit different if you're B2B or B2C. B2B, you're going to spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. Some of you may have an audience on Facebook that you may be able to create tribe around, and I think Facebook is a great place to do that. And you may not. B2C, way different audience, and you're going to have probably more people on Facebook, as well as some contacts on LinkedIn. But you're probably going to have a stronger audience with Facebook and YouTube and Instagram than the B2B folks. So let me keep rolling down to the next point here. All right, so key strategies for using live video. And again, I think getting a lot of these things working for you is the key to getting into LinkedIn um, when that opens up to the masses. And I don't think it's going to be that long. I think that's going to be fairly soon. It's going to be a great tool for businesses, but really try to use video as much as you can right now with the current layout. Key strategies for using live video. I found the best way to get started with live video is to start by creating short snippet live videos that you can make easily, engage interest. And you don't need high-powered equipment to do live video. Much of what I'm using right now is acceptable. You don't have to have fancy cameras. You don't have to go through a great deal of equipment expense. In fact, that's true with webinars too. You don't need a lot of equipment expense. So when I first talk to people about doing video or businesses about doing video, we usually go through the 4 fear factors. And the 4 fear factors are the equipment. I'm just not sure what equipment I need and how to make that all work. So I want to cover those kind of briefly with you guys because it's important in this section. And then the next piece, it's kind of hardware, software. So the software side is, okay, what's the technology that's involved with this? How do I interact in a meaningful way so that people see me? So what are the applications that I can use? And how does that all work out? And then the third thing is the fear of getting your face in front of the camera. And unfortunately, there's no easy ways around that. Doing short snippets works pretty good. And usually you're horrible before you get better. I got to be honest. We're usually terrible, but we aren't that terrible. We get the point across. It's fun to go back, like years from now, look at our videos and go, wow, I really improved over this time frame. And that's good. And it is a continuous marathon and improvement session that we all undergo. But unfortunately with that, you just kind of have to feel the fear and do it anyway. There's ways to get around it. So let's say, for instance, the structure you're in allows you to have a friend or a business associate support you in creating your videos. Do that. Get somebody like me to come in and help with that and help structure that and be with you as you do them. That helps a lot. So you can hire a consultant to work on that with you. And then, of course, the last thing is, what am I going to say? And am I going to run out of stuff to say? Because we all start to worry about, man, what am I going to concentrate on here? And how much can I keep talking about? But I'd argue with you, there's tons of things to chat about, whether it's facts that you want clients to know about you or other businesses to know about you, or whether it's things maybe people don't know about you that you'd like them to know, those kinds of things, or what makes you different from others, what makes you similar. There's all kinds of things that you can start to work through, and eventually you get some traction and you can kind of get feedback from that. Go ahead, Russ.
So talking about gaining traction on
Yeah.
video, what are some of the key metrics as you're working with clients that you're kind of measuring over time, video to video or trends? Is it people tuning out during the live session? Is it kind of like interaction, impressions, and chat and questions?
Sure.
And then how do the metrics differ between a live session and something that's recorded? So
Like a webinar.
yeah, exactly.
Usually our webinar platforms have the metrics built into them. So it will help us with, watch time and all of those interesting metrics that we'd like to know about. YouTube, if you have a YouTube channel, it does it automatically. It'll tell you how long people are watching your videos, where they fall off, all of those things. And it's good to know those statistics, because if people are falling off after 5 minutes, you bored them somewhere. Something just isn't quite setting. You went off in a different direction, maybe that wasn't the right direction for them. So you can definitely learn some meaningful data from those stats. Live video is a little more difficult to engage unless you have stats from somewhere, analytics that show you, social media analytics. But the big things that we're looking for is how many people are watching us, how frequently, which episodes, which topics. Those are the main things that we try to keep interaction or keep an eye on, so that we can adjust accordingly. So if we find a topic that goes over well, the next thing in my list here is that we study viral content. Excuse me, tongue twister there. Viral content that's comparable and or successful blog posts that we've seen get lots of traction, and we can develop content around that. And it's a great way too to look at things that your competitors are doing and maybe comment about those things, or news stories about what's going on in your industry, and add your take to it. So there's great ways to come up with more topics to talk about, and to kind of keep an eye or look at things as successful and just model after them. Does that make sense?
It does. And you mentioned that it might be a concern for some folks doing video. There's drop-offs in the first 5 minutes. Maybe attendees are getting a bit bored. What are the corrections that you're usually making with those customers who are experiencing the early drop-offs? Any patterns?
Yeah, some of it may not be too much to worry about. because, for instance, I did mention we have the attention span of a goldfish now. So you do have to understand that people have shorter attention spans and they're moving along to other things. And now is probably not the great time to be looking at metrics with real interest. It's more a time to be looking at metrics with interest, just to kind of see what things are popping up and how long people are looking at videos. But probably everything is kind of unpredictable at this moment. You know, like I said, with all the things going on, we just have no way of indicating what's going to happen. In fact, I marvel a lot of times. I was thinking about this the other day. All these people going to restaurants, and for the first time ever, restaurants just have no idea how many people are coming into their restaurant. They don't know what to cook, what to buy. It's kind of the same way here. It's wide open matrix, and it's really hard to figure out how to adjust to what's going on, because we just don't know what's happening. Kind of. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
Yeah.
Another question from the group, and then we'll let you get back to the content because we're going to go till about 12:45.
Okay. Perfect.
What software tools do you recommend for creating a content library to create promotional material and to structure your CRM and your email campaign follow-up? So any good platforms you like for those things?
Okay, for CRM, and that's going to vary a lot. I mean, we use Infusionsoft frequently. We use ActiveCampaign for our CRMs to keep track of email stats and those kinds of things. I think they're pretty well suited, or something like that. You guys may have other tools that are similar to those. Obviously, Google Analytics can help in many cases to keep track of what's going on. Making sure you pixel everything for Google and for Facebook, because that's going to give you some great audience data. Those are kind of the key things that we're concentrating on right now, stuff along that line. Another thing, kind of going down my list here, I mentioned run simple ads to see what topics resonate with your audience. You can run some ads and find out things from doing that. You don't have to spend a lot of money. Multi-stream and syndicate to find other places your audience hangs out. So we've been using for our live streams mostly Wirecast and StreamYard. We like StreamYard and also Crowdcast to a certain extent, because Crowdcast lets you do webinars and stream to multi-platforms. They have a plan that does that.
Yeah.
But we found through multi-streaming that we've found places, like we didn't really think we had a big audience on Twitter. To us, it's kind of like a bulletin board in a lot of ways, and that's the way many people use it. I know it's not that at all if you really know how to use it, but I'm just saying a lot of us, that's what it appears to us to be, is more like a bulletin board. So we found out we had audience in other areas. We were broadcasting to Periscope and to YouTube, and we found that we could get traction in multiple places. So we continue broadcasting to those things, or we change what we broadcast. Like maybe we'll do short snippets to those. But StreamYard's a great tool because it'll let us broadcast to more places than just one. Where with Zoom, we're kind of limited to being Facebook or YouTube, Be Live, Facebook or YouTube. So.
And in terms of having kind of like your catalog, your library of videos, storing those on a platform, maybe you embed on your, maybe it stays on a third-party website. Are there providers you like there more than others? Vimeo versus like a Wistia or any of those types of providers?
Vimeo and Wistia.
You get onto the last slide or two.
Yeah. Vimeo and Wistia are probably the two that I use the most, or the two that I see used the most. Some people are bringing their videos and just storing them on Amazon S3 just to have storage for them. I've seen other tools that folks are using. But those are probably the most common, I would say.
Got it.
All right. So the last one, I'm going to wrap it up here because I know we want to make lunchtime learning enjoyable and reasonably short, so you come away with the key things here today. But so what are the opportunities today to capitalize on these new strategies for webinars and live streams? This is a time where we always tell people you want to double down on your marketing efforts. And usually when we say we want to double down on marketing, we start to think, wow, doubling down on marketing means doubling down on expenses. It doesn't have to be the case. I think that's a great place where video fits in nicely, because you don't the expense does not necessarily come with the doubling down of creating more video. It's more of a time uh, contributor. We're contributing our time to it versus our dollars. So if dollars are short, this might be a great way to double down on your marketing efforts. Building an audience and tribe is key right now. Today, where people are home, I'm sure you guys are doing this too, binge watching on Netflix and Hulu and watching all kinds of shows and reading, and everybody wants to pick up something, learn something. It's a great time to do workshops for an audience or create videos that contribute to getting more information about your product or service or business out. AI is a key factor. We're using tools like bots to help bring people to our webinars. And there's another tool that we're using that has nothing to do with the bot side. It's really pretty fascinating. But to language our webinars and websites and tools accordingly so that we speak to people in a more balanced approach. So, like for instance, we know that birds like worms. They don't like strawberry ice cream, right? So we don't want to go talking about strawberry ice cream to people who are lactose intolerant. Or I think you get the idea of where I'm coming with it. But we have a coding system that I've been working closely with a friend of mine on called Bank, which looks at blueprint, action, knowledge, and nurture. I did those out of order. Blueprint, action, nurture, and knowledge. But with that, we're able to go through, and all of us are higher in certain elements of this. We're either higher in blueprint or stability, higher in action-oriented words, higher in knowledge, we're very technical, or we're very relationship-oriented, and so nurture fits us. So anytime we can balance out our message is a good thing to attract more people to it, because we don't really want to turn them off by using the wrong words. And the last thing is, this is really a perfect time for you to be you and to sink into who you truly are. Getting out on live video and with webinars is a great way to interact and get people to know, like, and trust you faster. In this space where right now we have all of this chaos going on around us, there really couldn't be a better thing than that. So that's our ultimate end goal. And with that, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being with you guys today, and love to answer any more of your questions you may have.
Great, John. Great having you on. And to sort of like bring this all back to to the poll that we started with, had a lot of folks saying we don't do video right now, but we'd like to, and a lot more folks saying we do webinars, or a few more folks saying we do webinars and we do live stream.
Okay.
So great. I think one great takeaway from the material they presented was you can do short segment live streams. You can run experiments, find out what's resonating.
Yep.
Then you can go to the heavy lift of now what is the 31 hour, 90-minute webinar that we know is really value additive because we figured out what the pain is and what's resonating.
And I was going to say it's a balanced approach, really. And many of you, depending on your business, may find that you never really need to do webinars. Like, for instance, we can do almost everything that we need to do through a live video that we would do on a webinar. You can sell from live video. So you may find that that's a great way to get started and feel out what it's like to do webinars using the formula and the strategy, but working with live video, depending on where your clients are.
Yeah. And then we have 2 questions.
Okay.
Like a 1-sentence answer because we're coming up on time.
Okay.
One, any inspirational examples of video campaigns by companies or video producers that come to mind for you? And then question 2 is, if you can do it in 1 sentence, how do you optimize conversion from your webinars? That might be a whole different topic.
Wow, that might be a tough one.
Yeah.
The optimized conversion one may be a little bit difficult to get into because that takes a little bit of time.
Yeah.
I was gonna add that I kind of came up with this other little graphic that I picked up from Gary Vaynerchuk, which I thought today made perfect sense to me, in that we need to let the audience decide what we're creating and what our content should be. Doing it with just just us in mind, and our subjective opinion isn't enough. And this fits into like so many different areas of what we talked about today. Let's see. So hit on that because you asked me inspiring things that people are doing. In particular, I watch a lot of stuff that Russell Brunson of ClickFunnels does, because he really came out with the webinar formula that we use predominantly. We have some twists on it, but he has showed us like the main webinar formula, and he does great business from his webinars. There's just so many people. Amy Porterfield there's a lot of people in the self-improvement space, in a lot of different spaces that do a great job with webinars. The best thing to go out is really search and try to get in and watch as many webinars as you can, because you'll find that extremely helpful. Just seeing the delivery, especially if you've never done any, just to kind of understand the delivery and look at how other people have done that. So.
Sounds good. And for optimizing conversion, Jason from the audience, stay tuned. Maybe that's
stay tuned. Maybe that's a part 2. Yeah, I don't know.
That's part 2.
Yeah.
John, I'm just going to take over the screen for one moment. So for everyone who is still tuned in with us, present here. A couple of other webinars coming up for Venture Lane this week and next as it loads. It's a busy slide. If you want to take a screenshot, by all means. On Thursday, we'll have Lily Lyman, partner at Underscore VC in Boston, talking about how your investors can help restart growth. So Lily's been on the front line sort of supporting Underscore portfolio companies right now. So it'll be a lot of lessons learned on what Underscore has done to be sort of a value additive investor, and the things that your investors can do aside from contributing financial capital. And then coming up next Tuesday, we'll have how to build trust and safety when your teams return to work. We'll have Pratt Bennett, VP of Learning and Development from ASUP, and myself, General Manager at Venture Lane, talking about how do you build trust with your team right now as you're preparing to get them back into a physical workspace. And what goes along with that is what sorts of questions you should be asking your physical workspace operators, so you can communicate those things to the team and build that trust. And as always, for all of our crisis programming coming up, you can visit our website down below there, theventurelane.com, program and events. And I'll pop our newsletter subscription link into the chat for anyone who needs it. So that's it for today. John, thanks so much for joining and for giving us a bit of a playbook. As we've learned, got a lot of people thinking about doing video for the first time. So this is great content. And thanks everyone for joining. And we'll see you on a webinar coming up soon.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, John.
You're welcome.